The insult, delivered right in the middle of the crowded, opulent reception hall, wasn't accidental. It was carefully calculated and perfectly designed to inflict maximum public damage, a final, public humiliation from the man who was supposed to be my protector. My father, Harold, leaning across the table with a sneer of parental disappointment, gestured vaguely toward my simple, elegant dress and whispered loud enough for the entire family table to hear, frankly, "Maya, I wish you'd made more of an effort. You're never going to land a decent man looking like that. You should have taken a page from your sister's book and worn something that actually works with your coloring." He paused, sipping his expensive red wine with a satisfied, dismissive flourish, a final act of contempt that perfectly encapsulated 25 years of being the plain, overlooked daughter next to my dazzling, perfect sister Eliza, whose wedding we were currently celebrating. What my father, my superficial mother, Caroline, and my vain sister failed to realize was that my simple appearance that day was a deliberate choice, a disguise I maintained to execute a far more devastating, high-stakes secret that was about to be revealed. The man he was mocking me for not landing was already mine, and he was currently one of the groomsmen, a man whose true identity and terrifying global status were about to be revealed in the most public, unassailable, and socially catastrophic way possible for my parents' social standing. The moment came when that man, the handsome, towering groomsman, looked directly at our table, raised his glass, and offered a specific unmistakable, a highly formal military salute that instantly revealed his identity to the few people in the room who understood its protocol. A salute that caused my father to literally spit his expensive wine across the table in shock and immediate, visceral fear. My revenge wasn't loud, it was the quiet, absolute finality of my husband's undeniable, high-status presence, a presence that instantly exposed my father's entire world as a petty, irrelevant sham. I need to know absolutely, was I wrong for maintaining the simple, plain disguise until that exact public moment, allowing my father to deliver the final, unforgivable insult, thereby setting the stage for the most spectacular, career-ending humiliation possible for him? Or should I have simply revealed my husband's identity in a quiet, private chat beforehand? Tell me if you would have chosen the quiet chat, or the public, total destruction of their social facade. To grasp the magnitude of the insult and the precision of the counter-strike, you must first understand the oppressive, toxic environment I grew up in. My parents, Harold and Caroline, were social climbers obsessed with appearances and status. My older sister Eliza was their masterpiece, blonde, beautiful, popular, and destined for a marriage that would enhance their social standing. She was the star, Maya was the shadow, the designated plain one, always criticized for my lack of sparkle and my quiet, bookish nature. My career choice, becoming an international operations consultant, a highly specialized field that required immense travel and absolute discretion, was sneeringly dismissed as unstable and unladylike. Their constant criticism of my appearance wasn't just superficial, it was a psychological tool used to control me, a relentless reminder that I was less valuable than my sister, less likely to secure a high-status partner, and therefore, less worthy of their attention or respect. This toxic environment drove me away, pushing me into a world where my competence, not my looks, was my currency, a world they knew absolutely nothing about, a world that ultimately gave me the ultimate perfect weapon. My weapon, the source of their undoing, was my husband Marcus. I met Marcus through my work, a highly classified, discreet project involving global asset protection and security logistics. Marcus, in his late 30s, was not just a successful businessman, he was a former high-ranking officer in a specialized, elite branch of military intelligence, now running his own private, global security consultancy firm that worked for governments and major global corporations. He was quiet, intensely reserved, impeccably formal, and yes, devastatingly handsome. We dated for 2 years and married in a small, private, civil ceremony, a choice made partly due to our professional needs for discretion, and partly to avoid the very public circus my parents would demand, a circus I wanted no part of. The key to the revenge was the depth of my parents' ignorance. They knew Marcus existed. I introduced him once, briefly, as a colleague, but they dismissed him immediately due to his quiet demeanor and his simple, unassuming clothing. They pegged him as low-level security staff, another one of my unsuitable acquaintances. I happily reinforced this delusion, maintaining the facade of the plain, single, career-obsessed daughter, right up to Eliza's wedding. I chose a simple, unremarkable dress and wore minimal makeup, deliberately avoiding the effort my father constantly demanded, ensuring his final insult would be entirely rooted in his own superficial, judgmental nature, a nature I was about to exploit with devastating precision. The setup was perfect. Eliza's wedding was the ultimate display of my parents' aspiration, lavish, expensive, and crammed with their entire social circle, every attendee a judge of the Harrison family's status. Marcus, though he usually avoids such public events, agreed to attend as a groomsman, a decision we made specifically because it put him directly into the orbit of their judgmental circle, yet still kept his identity partially obscured, allowing for the maximum dramatic reveal. His presence was not just a formality, it was a deliberate, strategic placement of the bomb. My father's insult, the one about my appearance and my inability to land a decent man, was the exact perfect trigger. The silence that followed his cruel whisper was agonizing, all eyes at the table on me, waiting for the meek, defensive response they expected. But I had a different response planned, one that involved 0 words from me, relying instead on the quiet, devastating power of my husband's true identity, a move that would prove their entire world was built on a foundation of professional and social blindness. The opportunity came during the final set of toasts. The best man finished his speech, and the entire wedding party, including the groomsmen, stood up to raise their glasses to the new couple. It was a standard moment, a brief tableau of well-wishers, but this was my moment. Marcus, standing tall and utterly commanding at the end of the groomsmen line, turned his head slowly, deliberately, his eyes locking with mine across the massive, flower-adorned table. He held my gaze for a silent, powerful beat, his expression one of protective strength, completely ignoring my father's existence. Then he performed the move we had choreographed, a final, unassailable gesture that was both a sign of respect to me and a silent declaration of his terrifying, superior status to the entire room. He didn't just raise his glass, he executed a precise, immaculate military salute, snapping his wrist to his brow with a formality and discipline that was completely out of place at a civilian wedding, a salute that was directed entirely at me, his wife, the plain girl. The sheer, anachronistic formality of the gesture was a deliberate flag. So that was the situation. My father just publicly mocked my appearance and my inability to find a decent man, at my sister's wedding, completely unaware that the unassuming groomsman was my husband, a high-ranking former military intelligence officer. I had prepared a public, silent signal that would instantly expose my husband's true status and his relationship to me. Before I tell you the specific absolute and immediate consequences that single formal salute had on my father, my family, and their entire reputation, the way his entire, superficial world imploded the moment that hidden truth was revealed, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have let the moment pass and confronted them later, or would you have chosen the perfect, public, high-status reveal, ensuring their shame was absolute, and their social standing was permanently ruined? Let me know your thoughts right now, because the moments that followed were a cold, perfect masterpiece of social warfare and familial justice. The effect of the salute was like a perfectly placed detonation, completely silent but with explosive shockwaves that radiated outward, starting with my father. Harold, who had just taken a smug sip of his expensive merlot, caught Marcus's eye, saw the salute, and his face went instantly slack. He was an executive, a man who dealt with high-level military and corporate contacts, and he instantly recognized the chilling formality and the absolute, unassailable confidence in that salute. It wasn't the gesture of low-level security staff, it was the mark of someone profoundly powerful, someone whose rank and authority had been earned in places far outside his comfortable boardroom. The shock was so profound that my father literally spat his red wine across the table, splattering the white tablecloth and his own jacket in a grotesque display of involuntary, visceral fear and shock. His eyes, fixed on Marcus, were no longer filled with contempt for me, but with the terrifying realization of the profound, potentially career-ending mistake he had just made. The chaos escalated when 2 specific individuals saw the salute. First, the most influential guest at the wedding, the retired general who was Eliza's father-in-law's old mentor, snapped to attention, recognizing the precise, high-level intelligence protocol in the salute. He instantly turned to my father, who was still sputtering wine, and hissed, "Harold, who is that man? And why is he saluting your daughter? Do you know who he is?" The general's inquiry, laced with suspicion and respect, instantly signaled to the most powerful people at the wedding that my father was either lying about his connections or dangerously ignorant about a person of clear, significant international status, a disastrous miscalculation in their tightly knit, status-driven world. Second, my mother Caroline, recognizing the sudden, terrifying shift in the atmosphere and the general's anger, immediately tried to grab my arm and whisper, "Maya, who is he? What is he doing?" I simply smiled, and before I could answer, Marcus, completing his salute, gave a slight, formal bow of acknowledgement and began walking directly toward our table, cutting a path through the stunned guests. The moment Marcus reached our table, he bypassed my horrified parents and sister entirely, placed his hand gently on my shoulder, and in a clear, resonant voice that carried across the nearest tables, spoke the single, final word of the exchange, "Mrs. Thorne, he said, his eyes conveying total devotion. I trust your father's comments did not upset you. Please excuse me, General. My wife and I will be departing now. The titles were the final, absolute strike, Mrs. Thorne and General. The General immediately rushed over, bypassing my parents entirely, extending his hand to Marcus with genuine respect. My apologies, Colonel. Your wife is Harold's daughter. A pleasure. I insist you and Mrs. Thorne join me for a brief, private conversation. The conversation immediately shifted the dynamics. My father went from the proud host to a non-entity, watching in silent, agonizing horror as his plain daughter and her low-level husband were ushered away by the highest status man in the room for a private urgent conversation, a move that publicly exposed his financial and social arrogance as a dangerous form of blindness. The aftermath was a total, immediate collapse of my parents' social and professional standing. The General, suspecting my father's business dealings were not as legitimate as advertised and highly offended by the disrespect shown to Marcus's wife, quietly distanced himself and his powerful network from my father. This loss of high-level connection was an immediate, severe blow to Harold's firm, which relied on those social pipelines for crucial contracts, leading to professional marginalization and a sudden, significant loss of business. My mother's social life, centered around bragging about her perfect daughter, completely imploded as the story spread. The story of the parents who publicly insulted the wife of the powerful, mysterious Colonel Eliza's perfect wedding was forever tainted, the dominant memory being the spectacular, wine-spitting disgrace of her father. I never spoke to my father again after that day. Marcus and I flew out the next morning for a lengthy, complex assignment, leaving them to deal with the public and professional fallout of their own toxic, superficial values. I am now completely free, living a life of profound respect and genuine partnership, my plain appearance a constant, silent reminder to Marcus that my true value is internal, and to my former family that they lost everything of true worth. My success, my love, and my connection to a world of power they could never even touch, all for the sake of a single, cruel, disposable insult. And so that's the complete, shocking story of how my father mocked my plain appearance at my sister's wedding, calling me unable to land a decent man, only for him to literally spit out his wine when the groomsman, my husband, delivered a formal military salute that instantly exposed his true, high-status identity and utterly destroyed my family's entire social and professional standing. If you stuck with me through this entire unbelievable saga, thank you for letting me share my truth. Like this video if you believe that a single, quiet salute was the ultimate, proportional response to 25 years of emotional abuse and superficial judgment, and hit that subscribe button for more true stories where absolute success delivers the coldest form of justice. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Do you think my parents will ever realize that they weren't ruined by my revenge, but by their own toxic priorities? I'll see you all in the next story.